And now let's go from Brooklyn to East Harlem's waterfront.
It's about time they got a program like Cops and Kids.
And New York residents have a lot to say about it. Reporter Davina Jakova has the story.
From the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism, I'm Shanae Hart.
And I'm Arbelis Bonilla Ramos, and welcome to the CUNY News Update.
Coming up today, a look into an unlicensed marijuana dispenser's creative loophole.
We're not selling the cannabis. We're sharing it. I sell art.
One Bronx entrepreneur is making sweaters out of a surprising ingredient.
It feels really good. I'm not even gonna lie.
And a bicycle club advocates for better pedestrian and cyclist safety in Queens.
People are saying, I don't feel like car drivers respect me when I walk or bike in this neighborhood.
But first, for our top story. Hate crimes against Asians rose during the pandemic and continue. Now one woman is making it her mission to keep her community safe. Gretchen Smale reports.
The media coverage of anti-Asian hate crimes has died down. But in New York City, safety continues to be on the minds of many Asian Americans. That's where community groups like Angry Asian Women come in. Started by Sarinya Srisakul, Angry Asian Women mails out self-defense kits to Asian women and femme-presenting people. Thanks to community funding, the kits are free. They contain a whistle, an alarm, and a kubochan, a striking tool that can be used to create distance between you and an attacker.
When the spa shootings happened in Atlanta, that was a moment where I was like, oh, I need to do something.
Srisakul posted on Instagram that she was mailing out the kits. The initiative picked up steam after the murders of Michelle Go and Christina Yuna Lee.
I was like, oh, I'll just send out like 10 or 12. The post like blew up, and it was like I had to cut it off at 500 because I was like, I can't fulfill this.
Srisakul is the first Asian American woman to become a lieutenant in New York's fire department. Hearing about these attacks broke her heart and reminded her of her own assault from 10 years ago when a man ambushed and choked her.
I know what the feeling of losing your safety feels like, and I know how it felt to be too scared to leave my apartment.
She was able to escape her own attacker with self-defense training. So Angry Asian Women partnered with Dragon Combat Club, which started as a virtual group in 2020 in the wake of anti-Asian attacks.
Essentially, we're trying to give them the skills to better understand, better learn how to be comfortable in their environment.
Co-founder John Hu said it's all about teaching people to be aware of their surroundings and what to do when they're confronted.
We often tell our trainees 70% of the time, as long as you're situationally aware and know what's going on around you, that's really all you need. It's only for that rare 10% that you can't de-escalate an event that you really have to involve yourself physically.
Sarah Najimian heard about the classes from the Angry Asian Women Instagram.
I've had a couple incidences in the past year, like just being on the street, like being attacked. So I wanted to I just want to be more prepared for those types of instances.
This can all be heavy, but Srisakul also says a big part of Angry Asian Women is finding time to let go of some of that anger with self-care and wellness events like the one they held recently called Channel Your Rage.
It's like you can't like separate self-defense without talking about mental wellness, and that's like the idea Channel Your Rage came from. It's just like, well, the world is cruel to us when we step out the door, but when you step in the door, you will be loved and you will be with your sisters and your siblings,
In the meantime, Srisakul continues to mail out the kits, buoyed up by donations and support from the community. This is Gretchen Smale, New York City News Service.
Up next, you're not imagining things. Heat waves are getting worse and lasting longer. A CUNY professor is documenting extreme heat in Bedford Stuyvesant. Ace Pedraza has more.
If you live in New York City, chances are you experienced extreme heat this summer.
Just press the trigger and there's a little red dot here which will show the temperature. Right now this table is 73 degrees.
Dr. Reggie Blake and Carolee Mossel, one of the research assistants at the City College of Technology in Brooklyn at CUNY, are showing off these heat guns they used to teach young campers in Bed-Stuy about urban heat islands this past summer.
We've also involved boys and girls clubs, We've gotten the young people involved in climate change. We've gotten grandma involved in climate change. So we span the whole spectrum.
Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn was one area that Blake, Mossel, and others have done community research in to show just how hot neighborhoods have gotten because of this effect. City streets are made up of asphalt, concrete, and other heat-absorbing materials. As a result, New Yorkers have been experiencing more heat-related illnesses than usual. Just this past summer, 725 residents visited the emergency room due to the heat. It's one reason why Assemblymember Stephanie Zeiderman, who represents Bed-Stuy, reached out to Blake for help looking into just how hot her constituents were getting.
We really just started having community conversations with folks about were they aware of the study? Did they understand why we had the community was warmer?
Zeiderman says that with Blake's involvement, students were able to see for themselves just how hot Bed-Stuy was getting, using those small but mighty heat guns.
That really blew their minds to think that as young men in an area like Bedford-Stuyvesant, that's been traditionally overlooked and left out, here they are doing science with state-of-the-art equipment. That just blew their minds.
For New York City News Service, this is Candace Pedraza.
In Hunts Point, a unique factory, it's turning food waste into winter fashion. Andrew Archeta covered the story.
What if you could make luxury clothing out of recycled food waste? It could happen here in Hunts Point, the new clothing factory for Katy, New York.
In this case, it's really developed to be an alternative to animal fiber cashmere.
Meet David Lee, a former dancer who founded KD New York. He's been in the clothing business for the last 40 years, and he wants to turn this open space into a factory for sweaters and athleisure. Cashmere is made from the hair of goats like these. But animal rights activists say that the industry is cruel to animals. It's also bad for the environment, degrading the grasslands in countries like China and Mongolia. Vegetable cashmere is made from soybeans. Tofu and soy milk have a lot of waste products that can be pressed into a paste, rolled into thread, and woven into cloth.
We've been testing for a number of years with customers. I would say 9 times out of 10, they cannot tell the difference. And in most cases, they like the hand feel of vegetable cashmere more than the animal fiber.
To celebrate the new venture, Katy Knit hosted a launch party in the new space. Some local activists were excited about the prospects for manufacturing in the Bronx.
He could be anywhere else with his business, but he's decided that he wants to be in the Bronx, that he wants to bring sustainable manufacturing to the Bronx, that he wants to hire Bronxites, and that he wants them to be worker owners.
That sounds pretty good, but what do the potential customers think?
It's really good. I'm not even gonna lie. Like, I would totally wear these.
But starting the new factory won't be cheap. David says he'll need about $4 million, and he's hoping to crowdfund it from local investors. From CUNY News Update, I'm Andrew Anchetta.
Also in Hunts Point, many people feel helpless in the face of accelerating global warming. But Sunny Nagpal found a community group that is inspired by our environmental crisis.
The theme of the latest exhibit in Bronx Art Space is climate activism. Last year, 5 artistic benches, designed by Bronx River artists, were installed along the Hunts Point Peninsula. The 600-foot pathway overlooks revitalized wetlands, which are part of the borough's latest efforts to protect flood zones. Artists were offered residencies by the point to create art that engages different sectors of the neighborhood. They want to address the issues in Hunts Point. Carrie Clark says her community badly needs cleaner air.
Because we live in Hunts Point, it's egregiously polluted here. Everybody has asthma. There's like 20,000 trucks that go through the area every day through this small residential community.
Hunts Point is home to the Hunts Point Market, the largest food distribution center in the world. But along with fruits and vegetables, its trucks bring polluted air.
With our community development end of the work that we do, it's all about environmental justice.
Artist Lynn Casaban is an advocate for wild weeds. She photographed beneficial plants that thrive in the urban landscape of Hunts Point. She mounted them at bus shelters.
This is an ongoing project that draws attention to plant species that are typically rejected as weeds, but which thrive in the harsh conditions we've created in cities. I also hosted several public workshops. One was a cameraless photography workshop. We gathered and identified plants from the surrounding neighborhood and used them in the process of making cameraless photographs using photogram and chemogram techniques. The other workshop was focused on making monoprints. After learning about aspects of the plants that we gathered, participants were encouraged to use plants that had qualities that they identified with as they made self-portrait monoprints.
The neighborhood also inspired artist Isabel Garbani. Her mural of tiles is handmade from plastics collected from the streets in Hunts Point.
I picked up trash from the Bronx, right on the sidewalk, right on the side of the road. I ground everything up and mixed it with glue and plaster, and then I made pre-made tiles.
Then, she made a mobile art cart and wheeled it around the Bronx. She asked people directly if they wanted to make art for the Bronx.
The best thing to do was just to engage people one-on-one and then have some way to be creative and to express themselves. For me, that was like the most important part.
Sharing voices in the Bronx is one of the core goals behind all of the Point's artist residencies. The gallery, Bronx Art Space, wants to expand their own residency program from 7 artists to 14 this year. 45% of spots are reserved for Bronx-based artists. For Mott Haven Herald, this is Sunny Nagpal in the Bronx.
Our next story takes us to Queens, where a group is advocating for traffic safety. I spoke with the activists demanding safer roads and protected bike lanes.
Bicycling is one of the easiest and quickest ways to commute in the city. For Richwood Rides, it's not only a fun thing to do, but a mode of travel that should be safe and accessible. Thane Thurl says biking in Richwood needs improvement.
Ridgewood is a bike lane desert. There is no bike lanes here, or virtually no bike lanes. If you go to Bushwick on the other side, tons of bike lanes. You go to Queens, once you get past, like say, Forest Hills, tons of bike lanes. But here, none.
This summer, Richwood neighbor Beatran was fatally injured in a hit and run in the area around Myrtle Avenue. Richwood Rides is currently promoting a petition that is
asking for bike lanes or pedestrian safety or better intersections, especially to access to high-value places such as the reservoir in Highland Park.
The Department of Transportation has been actively investigating intersection improvements and the larger bicycle network in the area identified in the petition.
Generally right now we've gotten a lot of positive reception. People are saying like, yeah, like I don't feel like car drivers respect me when I walk or bike in this neighborhood. And yeah, for us it's just like highlighting that. That's like we'd like to maybe get like around 3,000 petition signatures. That takes a fair amount of time. Last week we were out here though and we got 50 in the span of a few hours, and I think that really just shows that there's a strong support from the community to want to see the safety access on the street improved. We really want to know what people are feeling when they're walking or biking in Ridgewood and if they feel safe or not.
Longtime residents of Richwood say the big issue is safety.
Because there's more bikers moving in here every day almost, and we just don't have the infrastructure that should be here at this point. So that'd be a great thing for people to start thinking about.
Some solutions would also benefit drivers.
Bike indication, like of the bikes coming, the sharing the road, would be really helpful for the driver as well.
It's about improving our community, not just for folks like me who ride my bike in the neighborhood, but also for pedestrians and families, just to make the streets safer and better for everyone, all of my neighbors.
Richwood Rides meets every other Thursday and Saturday in parks in Richwood. For New York City News Service, Arbelis Bonilla.
Our next story features Brooklyn playwright Alexis Spiegel, who opened the Flatbush Community Theater to house a program for kids, a program that could change their lives.
When the pandemic hit more than 2 years ago, many of us put our dreams on hold. But not playwright Alexis Spiegel. Instead, she got busy creating a theater program that teaches kids the art of theater.
Sort of a dream of like a real home in the community where they could practice theater and support each other by doing something creative together.
The 13-week program called the Flatbush Theater Project is full of students who have little or no experience with theater.
No experience is great because what we're really trying to tap into is just being truthful and alive on stage, right? And having presence. So I'm not worried about that. I encourage that.
At the end of the program, these kids walk away knowing more about theater, and some attain stronger levels of confidence and self-esteem.
Theater helped me to find my voice and comfort within my own body. We have a student named Shamara who, prior to this program, would get really nervous just even speaking to people. But that gentle push to go outside of your comfort zone and show the world who you are and take up space really ingrains, especially in children. You know, if they learn it from a young age, then they're likely to carry those traits throughout the rest of their life. And it's helped me, and I'm positive it will help them.
The Flatbush Community Theater was built to house the theater program, but Alexis is hoping to open her doors to much more opportunities.
We're a team of 3. There's a lot that we can do, and it's like, how much can we bring to the community? What kinds of theater do you want? But I do think that part of the answer to those questions when they come from the community is yes, and spread the word about fundraising.
As Alexis and her team hold the door open for more community opportunities, they're also working on becoming a nonprofit organization.
For the time being, we have a fiscal sponsor, and yes, fundraising, donations, and grants are very important to our budget. It doesn't really work without it. So yes, we're doing everything we can, our small team, to make sure the community knows about us.
The Flatbush Community Theater and the Flatbush Theater Project are still in their beginning phases, but Alexis has hopes that the theater and the program will be thriving in the next 5 years.
I hope there's Flatbush Theater Project for high school every fall, for middle school every spring, and for the prequels peppered in there. I would love to see more and more people bring their passion projects to our theater and use it as a space to flesh them out, show them to the community.
For New York City News Service, this is Shanae Hart.
And finally, meet Mr. 420, a marijuana dispenser without a license, who has found a very creative workaround for his business. John Sheelan reports.
There's a distinct smell in the air in Rockaway Beach, Queens, and it isn't the ocean. It's the smell of marijuana. Locals are cashing in on the city's soon-to-be booming industry, with some surprising twists.
We're not selling the cannabis. We're sharing it. I sell art. You see all these bags? These are all custom-made bags. You know, so that's what you're actually buying.
And that, Omar Herrera, the owner of the Beach Boys Buds van, says makes his business 100% legal.
So we're not breaking any laws. We're not breaking any, rules.
The licenses that allow businesses to sell adult-use cannabis have only just started to be distributed by the Office of Cannabis Management, even though New York State legalized the sale of weed in March 2021.
I also want to make sure that it is done correctly.
This created a legal gray area that allowed local marijuana dispensaries to operate throughout New York City since earlier this year, and Herrera was no exception. Herrera has been in business at the Rockaway Beach Ferry Terminal since June 2022. He was born on 420 and has always sold marijuana as a side hustle.
So I have a real passion for cannabis. I started using it at a young age, right when I was like 12, 13 years old. And I just fell in love with the plant itself, everything about it.
Beach Boys Buds is Herrera's way of sharing this passion while also serving the community at large. One of his earliest customers was Spider Scott Brannigan, a tarantula breeder, who has since joined the business as head of security.
I'm 71 years old with a lot of issues, but this gets rid of my pain, it puts me to sleep, and keeps me hungry.
The reaction to Herrera's presence, however, has not been all positive. While the NYPD has left him alone, Herrera says City Councilwoman Joanne Ariola has visited the truck to express her disapproval.
There's something wrong with that.
Ariola confirmed her visit and told us a significant part of the problem is the lack of knowing what the vendor is actually selling, since it is labeled as natural without listing its compound ingredients. Herrera has responded to this complaint by emphasizing his direct partnerships with cannabis growers to ensure the products are safe.
we're dealing with the growers themselves. So we have hand-to-hand interaction with them.
More than anything, he wants to enlighten those who frown upon the plant.
I want them to enjoy it. You know, that's what we're here for, just being here for the people.
And so far, the community response has made all the challenges worth it, says Herrera's business partner, Dave Riley.
You'd be amazed at how many people say they couldn't sleep or they had pain or it helped with a sickness, and they come back and thank us. It's almost as good as getting high, but a good high is helping other people.
For the CUNY News Update, I'm John Schilling.
And that's today's update. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Arbelis Bonilla Ramos.
And thank you for listening. This is Shanae Hart for the CUNY News Update.
That was a good story.
It was.
That was very interesting.
I'm excited.
Do you want to go to Rockaway?
Sure. Sure.